Welcome to the Fit with Dave podcast.
People have been taught is that, hey, don't express your emotions. Don't feel your feelings. We don't want to talk about those things. Well, what happened is like when people don't get a chance to talk about and feel their feelings and understand their emotions, then all of a sudden those emotions are extremely scary now. It's almost like you're running this direction. You know somebody's behind you, but you don't want to turn around and look.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fit with Dave podcast. Excited to be here today with the big homie.
What's up, brother?
What's up, man? How you doing, bro?
I'm pretty good, man.
So, before I, edify and bring him up here, I just wanted to say, man, you've been a huge impact. You've had a huge impact on my life and inspired me to, do a lot of different things. And you've helped me a lot with marketing and understanding branding. Helping me with Nutrition Tavern brand and business, and then of course Fit with Dave too. So
Absolutely.
The Fit with Dave brand came from this guy. So not only is he a great friend, but he's a father, he's a track coach, he's an author, he's a digital media marketing wizard, he's a national champion, a former NFL athlete, and he's got supreme self-esteem. So had to plug that in there for you. So guys, Absolutely. Get it for my man, Raymonn Adams, brother. Welcome to the Fit with Dave podcast.
Bro, it's exciting to be here with you, man. I'm excited that you're doing this, bro. I think you got so much great energy, man, and helping people, obviously get their bodies right, but also not just their bodies, but their minds. And everything you've done thus far since the day we met, man, has been like literally like who you are as a person. And again, I think that just that inner self-talk that you have and just that blueprint of who you are and how you carry yourself, man, is obviously shining and obviously filtering into other people's lives, man. It's pretty cool to see what you're doing now. So it's amazing.
Appreciate it, bro. I honestly, if it wasn't for you, I probably wouldn't even be here, man. I wouldn't have the confidence to start something like this, so I really appreciate you, man. I appreciate you taking the time to, join me today. It's a little icy today. Texas, we got some snow last night. I don't know if you know that.
No, I had no idea.
We got some snow, so it was hard to get up this morning, man.
Well, look, you say it's a little icy out. I'm sitting here looking out my window in Nebraska, and it's a bank. It's a bank literally up halfway up my pane of my window. So you got ice. We got a big old drift about, I would say at least about 4 feet.
Dude, I don't miss that. I don't miss that part. I miss a lot of things. I miss hanging out with you for sure. Yeah. The first time I was in Nebraska and it snowed, I almost didn't show up to work because I was like, oh, it's snow. Oh man, I'm staying inside watching movies all day. And then I rolled back over and I was like, wait a second, I'm in Nebraska. Like, do people still go to work?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, I had to get up there and scrape my stuff out the window and I was like, man, this sucks. Now I know why people hate the snow in Nebraska, because out here we kind of like it, It's like, oh, cool, snow day, movie day.
Yeah.
Nah, not the same.
Here. Work day.
Oh yeah, shoveling snow. So yeah, man, you're in Nebraska. Tell everyone where you're from. A little bit of your backstory.
Yeah, man, I'm originally from Texarkana, Arkansas. Actually, went from Texarkana, and truthfully, I'm an implant to Nebraska because being from Texarkana, being from the South, I ended up coming to college in Crete, Nebraska, which maybe 10, 15 minutes outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, and I made Lincoln, Nebraska my home. So once I went off and obviously did what I did from a professional career standpoint, I was able to make Lincoln, Nebraska my home and created that sort of like network of people that's going to, obviously help me to get to these dreams that I'm pushing for and also hold me accountable to those dreams. And so just once you get a chance to get a network built up, that's kind of like your net worth at that point in time when you building the right type of people around you. And so, yeah, man, from Texarkana, Arkansas now, and pretty much a implant in Nebraska, which I've been here for quite a while, since 97 now. So
wow.
It's been a very long time.
Since 97, huh?
Yeah. I don't think I lost my accent yet, though.
Nah, No, no, no. People still have a hard time understanding you in Nebraska,
Oh yeah, still
huh?
do. Yeah, yeah. Especially if I get happy, man. If I get happy and all of a sudden get really excited, then before you know it, I'm speaking Texarkana again, and then everybody like, "What did he just say?"
Yeah. So why Nebraska, man? What made you want to settle in Nebraska? You said something about relationships. You build a lot of relationships out there. You just feel like that was home away from home.
Yeah, man. What was crazy, bro? I actually had a an interesting experience. I end up uh, being one of the a highly sought after athlete, in the United States. Could have pretty much went to a lot of schools, Division I schools, but there was a guy by the name of Eddie Ray Five who came from Doane University, and it was in a small town in Crete, Nebraska. I had no idea, what that school was. Even didn't even know it existed. I didn't even know that Nebraska was really a thing. I mean, I was a kid just in my own world, and then obviously my athletic talent got a chance to gave me a chance to, kind of realize that there is more than just where I was from, which was in Texarkana. And so
Right.
I had a chance to visit the school. And when I visited Doane University, man, it just felt like home for me. I don't know
Mm.
what it was on my heart, but at the time, man, I could have pretty much went to any Division I school I wanted to, and it was just on my first thing on my heart to do was actually be the first person in my family to graduate college, and that's what really actually kind of set me on this path of just kind of like setting a different precedent for my family that made I think you know made me really kind of desire like it could be different than just running around on the football field catching footballs, maybe running track or running hurdles, because again I've done it at the highest level, in high school and in college, but at the same time, I just felt like it was just on my heart to be the first person in my family to graduate college. And man, that made a huge difference as to the decision
Wow.
I made. And then
Hmm.
obviously it's been paying off ever since.
Man, that's awesome. First person in your family, huh? Graduate
Yeah.
from college. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, man.
that's
I
that's
mean,
that's good.
you think about it, you're not just looking at this thing from a standpoint of yourself. What you realize is like if you shown your family that there's a possibility, then you could turn around and you know like affect every single person's decision if you've showed them that there is a pathway to a different type of a life. So um, my my me going out and making it happen and kind of jet setting has changed my family. So since then, man,
Mm.
my older brother and sister end up turning around and going back to college and getting their college degrees. And then since then, I think it's been like 17 of my family members, uh, all ages, who now college is like, hey, this is what we do. Like we're going to college to actually graduate. So I did set the precedent, like I felt was on my heart to do. Believe me, I didn't understand it at the age I was at the time what I was doing, but I just felt that was more on my heart to do, and it ended up happening for me.
Wow. And for your kids too, And I wanted to touch on that just a little bit because I seen your interview with X-Ray Xavier after winning. Can you tell us what he has accomplished as a track athlete, and then you being able to coach him? It's so inspiring, man. I sent that to a lot of my friends, dude, that have kids. I don't have any kids, but I got a lot of nephews and adopted nephews and whatnot, nieces, and just to be able to send that out and inspire some some of my friends. Shoot, it made me cry, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you, man.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard not to actually shed a few tears myself, man. Here was interesting. My son Xavier Adams is you know, the number one hurdler in the United States at the age of 12. I mean, he's the fastest hurdler, USATF, ran at the Hayward Field, the historic Hayward Field in Eugene, Oregon. And man, he ran well all year, but man, I never thought that he would get on a stage so early on in the season and then maintain those top times. And just like any sort of development of an athlete, they're going to always have these peaks, and all of a sudden they're going to kind of plateau out, and then they'll peak again if you continue to train them in the correct way. And so the biggest thing is like you got to hold on to the athlete's energy of like seeing that vision for themselves, but
Hmm.
also not making it your vision, it's their vision. And especially from a father to a son, and as a coach to his own son, you got to be extremely careful as to like not make it your dream. And
Yeah.
One of the main things that we always did, man, is when we were on the track, he saw me as coach. And when we got off the track, he saw me as dad. And so, like, when we were on the track, I bark at him just like I bark at any other athlete. And then when we got off the track, man, it was like, hey, I'm back to being dad. You would try to chase me to the front door, or I would actually try to beat him to the front door. And by that time, I mean, he's getting a little faster. So it
Yeah.
was kind of hard to, I try to pull that old trick where my hamstring would bother me. And then, I get a good old lean into it and take off running. He still ended up beating me most of the times, but again, man, he ended up having an extremely like successful year, and he could have, and truthfully, he started to feel some like knee pains a little bit here and there, but he fought through it, man. And I think that was the most impressive thing about him as a young athlete, and a young man growing up in this world, is because he didn't allow just the physical, nicks and bruises to really like deter him.
Mm.
And I would say, man, I credit that just from my mom's upbringing of speaking power into me, and then me also relaying and speaking that power into him. And I do it now so naturally that I just feel like that's just a part of his self talk, which I know my mom's power, speaking power to me, is a part of my self talk, and that's just kind of how I carry myself. And he just started to pick up on those things. And again, so when tough times came, he never really like got in his own head and tried to like give himself a way out. He's racing
Mm.
against some of the biggest and the fastest athletes, in the United States, and he ends up going out and competing extremely well on the national stage, man. And it was a beautiful 3 races, man, to watch.
Man, I was so excited for you guys when I saw I saw the results on your social media and everything, and uh, like I remember watching him just a few years ago, and he was jumping over the hurdles,
Yeah,
and then you were just like, man, if I can just get him to hurdle over the
yeah,
hurdles,
yeah.
and just to watch his form just increase and improve over the years, and then man, to see him now, it's just he's gonna be a force to reckon with over some years
Yeah,
now.
absolutely, man. When he first started running hurdles, man, like you said, he was jumping over hurdles, and when he jumped over hurdles, he ended up, not running as good at times. But the thing about hurdles, it's a skill, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's much about everything in life. Everything you're developing that you weren't born with, it's a skill, right? And we have all the faculties to do what we need to do in life, but at the same time, hurdles are just kind of like that sort of that avenue that teaches you, like, hey, there's 10 barriers in the front of you. Depending upon how you attack these 10 barriers is going to determine where you come out on the other side of it. And I've always taught him that way, is that
Mm-hmm.
to accelerate into the hurdle, and you come off that thing, running just as hard and just as excited to get to that next hurdle, no matter what the first hurdle was. Whether you clipped
Mm-hmm.
it, whether you tripped a little bit on it, you got to attack. And I think that's the thing that I always make sure that my hurdlers understand. And I teach them, even from my young hurlers all the way to the ones that are state champions right now, is that the best way to run a hurdle race, if you happen to clip a hurdle race and get a little bit off balance, is to attack the next hurdle just as hard and with more aggression to get yourself back in sprint mechanics.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that they live by, and you see them doing that in a race when they have a little bit of hiccup or something like trips them up a little bit, they
Yeah.
accelerate into that next hurdle with even more excitement and zest and zeal. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just how life is, man. And I've been able to kind of instill that into every hurdler, every sprinter, but at the same time, more so my son, which obviously it's kind of he's reaping the benefits of having that sort of mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can see it, man. You can see ever since I was around you and you started to tell me more about hurdling, just to see the form and that it's actually a skill, and it's about rhythm and timing. It's pretty amazing, man. And if you want to just touch a little bit on, because you're a track coach
Hmm.
and you're into sprint, you got the sprint speed school. So tell
Hmm.
us about sprint speed school a little bit, and why would a kid want to learn how to sprint? What's the benefit? Because on Fit with Dave, on a couple of my previous podcasts, we talked a little bit about the difference of like walking, because I know you're big into walking too for yourself as you get a little older. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? But also just the benefits of sprinting versus maybe jogging,
Yeah.
and how it can translate and how it can help into other areas of athletics.
Yeah, absolutely. See, so Sprint Speed School was actually a spinoff of Olympus Track Club. Olympus Track Club, we end up starting that track club, I would think about 7 to 8 years ago. And, we are a sprint club in this, like, centrally located in the United States, which is in Nebraska. And people don't think that there is speed in Nebraska. And I saw that there was some talent here. But the truth is, based off from where I'm from versus where other people are from, there wouldn't we wouldn't be the talent wasn't being developed here in Nebraska, and so I end
Mm.
up creating that that track club based off also me being fired as a volunteer from the first track club that I was helping my daughter with, and I just ruffled some feathers, I guess, the wrong way about training and everything, and so I end up creating Olympus Track Club. Olympus Track Club had so much success that a lot of people were like, dude, like, what are you doing with your sprinters differently than we are doing with ours? Because they look different and they're performing differently. And so I couldn't let everybody on the track squad, so I started Sprint Speed School, which is a highly focused sprint mechanics training for athletes of all ages. And once I started to realize that a lot of people didn't have the type of sprint mechanics they need to be successful, especially in running fast, then I developed that Sprint Speed School so that we can develop a really good high understanding of what sprint mechanics really are. And
Hmm.
so when I did that, I started to recognize, which I knew before, but I started to recognize the kids that came to Sprint Speed School and or ran Olympus Track Club, the athletes would go to their other sports, and all of a sudden they come back and be like, man, my basketball coach or my football coach or my volleyball coach is like, man, what did you do in the off season? And they would tell them, hey, I ran for Olympic Track Club and or I went to Sprint Speed School. And that right there changed the game for those athletes and their ability to actually navigate the football field, the basketball court, the soccer field, and even, and mostly volleyball as well, too. And I think
Mm.
that what people don't understand is it's like sprint mechanics translate across every single sport. If you look at
Right.
the top athletes in the NFL, those guys were track stars at some point in time.
Mm.
Whether they were, again, sprinters, 200 meter, whether they was hurdlers or they was high jumpers, long jumpers, every single thing you're doing from an explosive state or athletic standpoint, you're doing something that has to do with sprint mechanics, putting your body in position to be very explosive. And so that's how Sprint Speed School became what it is now. And now I developed, again, some of the best hurdlers and sprinters in the state of Nebraska based off that regimen of sprint mechanics first, and then go into your other sports. And
Right.
so the reason why you think about it, you got my son, for example, 12 years old right now, fastest kid in the country in the hurdles. But you look at a volleyball player who she goes and play volleyball, but also been training with me. All of a sudden now she's jumping higher. She exploding
Right.
more. She actually can move and navigate the court. But to your question that you asked earlier is, I don't think that people understand why sprint mechanics are very important when it comes down to just overall health.
Hmm.
Um, Sprinting is one of those things that produce more testosterone and fast twitch muscles than any other exercise or drills you can do. You can kind of do a little bit of it with this with the training regimen called, I think, the concept of HIT, high intensity training. But
Right.
when you're talking about trying to move fast from one location to the next, there is nothing better than actually sprinting, right? You have to do it quite often because the body is actually
Hmm.
reaching high octane every single time that you're trying to sprint. You don't try to get fast by running slow. So to put a sprinter out on a trail to run a mile or two, you're killing that sprinter.
Right.
A sprinter should never ever run cross country. If
Mm-mm.
you really want to get fast, you have to do fast things often, all the time. And you have to put your body in the optimal state. And I think that that's where a lot of athletes, once they come here, they realize, like, oh, my body just adjusted to explosiveness. My body just adjusted to moving fast. And you're developing fast twitch muscles. And in
Mm.
fact, there's a lot of science around the idea that the best times and stages to develop a person or make a person faster is between the ages of 9 and 13, because
Wow.
our bodies are accepting and ready to actually move fast at that time, or at least it's just malleable between the ages of 9 and 13. And then I think the next one is between the ages of like 15 or 16 and like 18. So you have to understand that if you don't know those things, then you could be on a like unknowingly training a kid to be very slow.
Mm. I feel like if a kid is not in your sprint program, they're behind. You know,
Yeah,
like, if they're not learning, how to do these hurdles, man, they're
yeah,
behind. So I see,
yeah,
that's a good reason why someone would want to put their kid in your program is not just for track, but for basketball, soccer, football, baseball, especially baseball. Shoot, that's all sprinting. If they're going from 0 to 100, in a second.
yeah.
So,
What your body has to do sprinting is totally different from your body has to do when it comes to walking, which
mm,
brings up the point where you said, what's the difference between sprinting and walking? Well, sprinting is obviously going to be that high intensity, quick twitch muscle development, explosive work, right? But also, when you walk, you're doing something totally different to your body, right? And what people don't realize is, hey, am I trying to burn fat or am I trying to become explosive and fast? Well, people don't realize this. If you take a look at all the Olympic sprinters, they typically look like they're real buff cats,
yeah.
but some of them are not as
Hmm.
tall and big. I mean, Usain Bolt was obviously kind of like a outlier,
An alien,
but
yeah.
he's him and Gatling. Those guys don't come often, right? But when
Right.
you look at him on TV, like, good God Almighty, that guy is very explosive. He's big, he's strong looking. But the truth is, he's not as big in person, but he looks like he has a ton of muscle. Well, that's fast twitch muscle. So you can actually develop
Correct.
a lot of muscle when you have fast twitch uh, type 2B fast twitch muscles. Well, those guys can go in the weight room and they can get big, fast, and quick, right? Because
Hmm.
they just have those twitch muscles.
Right.
But other people are maybe have type A or type 1, and that type 1 is more of a endurance type of a person.
Hmm.
Well, that doesn't mean that you cannot get fast. It just means you have to understand what energy systems you're using. So a sprinter is using a total different energy system than a person who's walking. Also, different energy system than a person who's a mid distance to a distance runner. Those are
Right.
2 or 3 totally different things that you're doing with your body. And those energy systems, you have to know what you're training so that you can make sure that the athlete is getting what they need. And I think that's no different than when you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to build mass or you're trying to explode or run faster. So you got to understand the energy systems that the body is going to use when you're doing certain things.
Absolutely, man. And just being around you for a little while, you helped my running a bit, and I started doing a little bit more, research and whatnot. Just doing 2 20-minute sprints like 3 times a week is enough for someone aging, that's maybe out of sports or whatnot, to get that benefit of sprinting, and without having to train nonstop like a sprinter would.
Yeah, and I think where people have a misunderstanding is the fact that, oh, well, I got to be fast to be a sprinter, and it's like, no, you just have to do sprint mechanic type things. In other words,
Mm,
how do you move your body and move your body in a way to where it's explosive in movement? And true enough, the best way to do it is obviously having the proper mechanics so that you don't get hurt and injured. But people don't realize you could be 8, or you can be 38, or you can be 48, you can be 68 and still sprint. And the
right.
thing is that yes, as you get older, you got to realize that you cannot go out here and sprint for 40 minutes. That's just not how sprinters work. Like, you want to have the high intensity of moving extremely fast, but then your body fully rest, and then let your body really understand, like, hey, dude, you sprinted today, so I'm gonna break your muscles down, and I'm gonna build you back up to be able to do that again the next day and the day after. And I think that people got to understand that it doesn't matter what age you are, you don't have to be the fastest person in the world to actually sprint. You just have to understand how to sprint, and that's how you actually get
Correct.
better and faster and get in great shape.
So one more question, and then we'll segue into a different subject here. But just maybe one or two nuggets about sprinting. Maybe just if you're talking to someone brand new and they're like, "Man, I want to get into running." Maybe they just want to run a mile. A lot of my listeners are people that are just getting into the fitness industry, and they want to, or they're on their own journey, and they're
Hmm.
trying to come up with their own routine and what they like. What's a couple of tips on just running in general that can help somebody to have better form, better technique, whatnot?
Yeah, so we've developed some of the best 800-meter and 1500-meter runners by training them how to sprint, right? Because people don't realize that your cardio is not going to move you around the track faster, right? The cardio is going to allow you to sustain at least an optimum high end speed, like at least like the type of speed that you want, especially if it's an 800 or a 1500 or even a 3200 in most cases. All of our guys start out as sprinters because they need to understand how to strike the ground and put a lot of force into the ground to move their body forward, right? Well, a sprinter who's running 100 meters is going to be able to hit that top end speed, and no matter what, the body's going to always decelerate because you're
Right.
burning high octane energy. So for a person who's trying to become a distance runner, they got to realize that if you go out there and sprint all day, sprint, and then go jump into the marathon, you don't have very long before your body's like, hey, I'm not ready for this.
Right.
Right? So they got to understand the two things. So sprinting is all about, hey, I'm going to sprint for 10 meters, 20 meters, and I need to rest my body full recovery for at least 45 seconds to a minute.
Hmm.
And then do that again, right? As fast as I possibly can. And you only want to do about 6 to 8 of those things per day, but you don't want to sprint every single day because you'll burn your body out, right?
Hmm.
Now, if you are trying to become a long distance runner to where you're trying to run 800s, 1500s, and you're trying to do it faster, what you got to realize is that that's a whole different energy system. So the things you would want to do as a person who's trying to run a better mile is that you want to run, let's just say, repeat 400s, right? You run a repeat 400, you're going to run it at about a 60 to 70% pace to where you're not burning out like a sprinter, but you only give yourself so much time to rest. So in other words, a sprinter wants to fully recover because you want
Hmm.
them to do that full speed. But when you're trying to get a distance runner to actually be able to get the cardio needed, but also at the same time that the type of anaerobic needed. In other words, if I broke it down in the math, you're going to have anaerobic and aerobic working, right? So if
Hmm.
you're a distance runner, you want to be more like 25 to 30% anaerobic, which is moving fast and explosive, versus aerobic, meaning cardio. So
Right.
if I can move around that track at about a good 65 to 70% pace, but then don't allow myself to fully rest and then put
Hmm.
my body back underneath that stress within less than, let's just say, a minute and a half or even less in some cases, then I'm creating a cardiovascular system that can actually take that, right? That sort of brunt work because now it's being repped and to understand like, hey, look, when your body's tired and wore down, if you're running about 65, 70%, you can do this, and all of a sudden your body rests just a little bit to actually push it again. Then you're in a whole different energy system that allows you to build what you need to build to be a
Hmm.
better distance runner. So again, it's just understanding the difference. A lot of people say, "Hey, sprinters are lazy." No, they're not. They just built they built totally different.
They're
And when
just
you can
smart.
understand what they are, yeah, they're
I said
smarter,
they're just
right?
smart. Just get in and get out.
Yeah, get
You
in,
know,
get out.
get
They be done in like 40 minutes, and everybody like, oh my god, they was kind of lazy, and they was just walking around all day. But it's like, no, if a person who was running distance turns around and then do sprint work, they'd be like, oh my god, that was painful.
it is.
And
It can be
so
brutal.
the truth is, it's like again, you just got to understand the different energy systems, and also just knowing a little bit about your type, your twitch fast twitch muscle, which type you are, type 1 or type 2. Then you could really help yourself develop a plan and a regimen that allows you to be successful. So those are the couple of nuggets I would make sure that people understand is understanding what are you trying to do? Sprint fat, explode, burn a lot of calories, or are you trying to run distance races to where you need to actually work on your aerobic strengthening?
Okay, and if someone was interested in you coaching them or purchasing your program, how can they reach out to you? How can they access your Sprint Speed School?
Yeah, so all they have to do is go to sprintspeedschool.com, and we obviously train here. I had a program that I sold nationally, and I may put that back up, and I can obviously share that with you later if I decide to do that. And that program pretty much just taught people how to do it, on their own pace, and it gave them
Hmm.
a pretty good understanding, and also gave them some workouts and some regimens to do that very same thing. Yet Sprint Speed School also is about, hey, you got to come to me. Obviously, if you're in Lincoln, Nebraska or surrounding areas, which
Yeah.
we have kids come from 4 hours away just to train as a sprinter, which is pretty cool and exciting to see. Means we're doing something right. But 4 hours away to get sprint mechanic training. And so sprintspeedschool.com would allow people to to get that experience, and then also get the hands-on experience where they can go take it back and continue to develop themselves.
Speedschool.com. Check it out, guys. So now I know sprinting and coaching is definitely a passion of yours, man. But this next topic I know is your bread and butter, and I know when you first brought it to me, I was like, dude, that is legit. Like I can get behind that,
Yeah,
and it spoke to me. So man, give us a little bit of tell us about Buffalo Status, man, and what that is, and how'd you come up with the name, Buffalo
yeah,
Status?
yeah, man. As you know, David, I went through some things in my life, man. Had ended up going through a divorce, and that was probably one of the most lowest times in my life. And I just couldn't understand like why I felt that way and what I was experiencing. And I just remember sitting here in my apartment, and I'm sitting flat on my back, and I had started thinking about finances. And that's when I realized, like the first time, man, my back literally started to tense up as if I was lifting 1,000 pounds. Like I literally felt tense as if I was lifting, but I was still laying flat on my back. And that's the first time that I really made the connection that our thoughts become things. And I've always had a sense of like understanding how my mind worked, but at the same time, I didn't make that connection with the body. And so when I really felt that sort of intense pressure while just literally sitting still based off my thoughts, I was like, whoa, our thoughts really do become things, because that made me respond and act in a particular way. And so I think the average person, especially myself, have a fighting spirit, and the fighting spirit it just shows up in ways of you just wanting to figure out what the hell is actually happening. What did you truly feel? And so I started doing a whole bunch of research, started studying, started growing, listening to things like The Strangest Secret from Earl Nightingale, James Allen. You are what you excuse me. You are what you think about. Um, and so many other, just like philosophers, whether it's Neville Goddard, whether it's, Alan Watts. I mean, all of these greats, man, they have been literally telling us this well before, but for whatever reason, you don't understand it until it's time for you to understand it. I guess that's when the teacher will show when the student is ready. And
Right.
I feel like that's what was happening. And so I started to study and grow, and then I created this little 4-step process for myself, and I didn't think about it being 4 steps. I just was like this, and this, because that's what was really creating. I realized that's what was helping me get through what I was getting through. Because again, I'm like, bro, I used to be so decisive and made decisions and wasn't concerned about everybody else's thoughts. But for whatever reason, through life, I was headed the opposite direction. And so I'm sitting here, 4 steps came, and all of a sudden I started like coming out of my own zone and started to see that person who was very, like ambitious and just making decisions, whether it be right or wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
just getting after it again in life. And man, and all of a sudden I would have friends that would come to me, and we'd be having just regular conversations, and all of a sudden they would say, "Hey, man, I'm experiencing this," and it triggered me to walk them through the 4-step process. And so I walked this friend through the 4-step process, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, they'll come back to me and be like, "Hey, man, you remember you told me this?" I'm like, "Yeah," and then you told me this and this, and you told me to do this, and I'm like, "Yeah." Well, all he was doing is just walking me back to this 4-step process, and I did that with two, three, four other friends, and all of a sudden, I'm like, "Wait a minute, this is consistent." And so what I did is I went back and I started to do more research to find out why is this working, and then that's when I realized that I came upon a scientific based way to actually face fear. And
Mm.
that's when everything kind of like was like, oh man, like this is bigger than me, bro. Like this is way bigger than me. And I realized like at first it took me about 30 minutes to go through that 4-step process. Now it probably take me less than 30 seconds. And
Wow.
now every single day I feel like any sort of like resistance or anything that I feel that is I hesitate on, I'm first and foremost, I run myself to that 4-step process. And that 4-step process allows me to actually go ahead and just move through life. And so the hugest thing about it was this is I realized that not only me as a man and or women and or men in the world, a lot of us face fear and don't realize that it's fear that's really what's holding us back from our biggest dreams
Yep.
or to achieve the most ambitious goals that we have. And you've heard it that fear means false evidence appearing real. But my goal is to help everybody realize that fear can mean face everything and rise. Because
Mm.
right now we in fear, face, you know what I'm saying, false evidence appearing real. We have to at least at some point in time switch over to a whole different mindset that, hey, fear is about facing everything and then so you can rise. And
Yeah.
when we can do that, now we're in a whole different state of the things that we want to achieve in life. And that's where, for me, I had to create this four-step process and make a community around it, which you asked the question about and where did the name come from. So I don't know if, again, like I said, you know what it's about, but for the audience, I want them to understand is that, I don't know if they know that certain parts of the country, cows and buffaloes roam the same plains, and in those same plains, uh, the cow recognizes a storm is coming. The cow recognizes a storm is coming. They turn the opposite direction and run away from the storm. But you would not know a cow is fat and slow, and inevitably the storm catches up to that cow, and it prolongs the pain and agony they're going to experience by running away from the storm. But what's unique about the buffalo recognized the storm is coming. And instead of turning in the opposite direction and running, it actually identified it as coming from that direction and from that ridge. And so it actually heads toward the storm because the buffalo instinctively knows that all he has to do is endure the storm for a brief moment. And on the other side of it is calmer winds and sunnier day. And this
Mm.
is true documented behavior of the buffalo. And so I call my four-step process buffalo status. And
Yeah.
that's how the thing became what it was. Because again, the moment that you reach buffalo status, you've become instinctive about facing fear. And so that's the
Right.
reason why it's called buffalo status. And so with that being the case, that's how buffalo status was actually born. And that's how I actually now travel the country and speak a lot about it, whether that's a father who's got divorced or a father who's actually, trying to figure out the right way to actually communicate with his wife or kids or in his business. But every person in the world is going to have something that they have fear of,
Right.
and buffalo status allow that person to truthfully go through that four-step process and eliminate it, so that they can actually move forward.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception that successful people, or like let's say public speakers, or uh, people in high positions, they don't experience that fear.
Yeah,
But
they do.
they all experience it. It's just they learn how to face it. And like you used to tell me, when you feel that nervous feeling, it's just because you're excited.
Yeah,
It's not. It has nothing to do with anything besides you're just excited, and it's good to be in that state of a little bit of uncertainty and things, because that's what helps us grow and become a better version of ourselves.
yeah, that's what brings you alive, right? I mean, if you think
Yeah.
about it, let's just picture it like this. Let's just say we have a sunny day outside, and all of a sudden you walk out of your house, everything seems to be perfect. Well, you're not going to have anything that really alerts you, right? But the moment that you walk down a dark alleyway in Chicago or New York or some unknown place, you definitely going to start thinking like, I got to look left and right a little bit and be
Yeah.
extra attentive to any movement.
Spidey senses kick in.
Your spidey senses come out. Well, your spidey senses are there for a reason, right? They're not
Yeah.
there to be like, hey, you know what? You should just shut down and feel full of anxiety and depression because you don't know what's going on. Well,
Mm.
I think the idea of what people have been taught is that, hey, don't express your emotions, don't
Mm.
feel your feelings. We don't want to talk about those things. Well, what happened is like when people don't get a chance to talk about it and feel their feelings and understand their emotions, then all of a sudden those emotions are extremely scary now. It's almost like
Mm.
you're running this direction. You know somebody's behind you, but you don't want to turn around and look. Well, it could be like a little old puppy, you know what I'm saying, the size of my fist that's really chasing you, but it's nothing big. But in your mind, you think it's big. That's the same thing with people doing with emotions and feelings. It's like, hey, I
Mm.
was taught not to actually really deal with it. And so now I'm really still running away from these things. And people don't realize is that there's two environments that we live in. There's a physical environment, and then there's a mental environment. Well, the physical environment you can move yourself out of, but the mental one, that goes with you everywhere you go.
Mm.
And so if you don't actually deal with this mental environment and have actual control of this one, then all of a sudden, man, no matter what you do, what you change, no matter what car you drive, no matter what kind of clothes you go buy, no matter what state part of the states you live in, you literally are going to still be in the very same environment. And it's most likely going to be
Mm-hmm.
full of anxiety and in an environment of depression and an anxiety of uncertainty. And when you get into that state, it is a repeating cycle at that point in time, and then it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. of, see, yep, I told you this is going to happen. Yep, see, yep, I told you this is going to happen. But you never realize that you're the person who's cutting on the lights and cutting off the lights.
Mm.
You're the same person in the dark than you are in the light.
Yeah. As
You're that very same person.
they say, no matter where you go, there you are, you know?
Amen. Yeah, don't get me to saying amen. That's true. Yeah, yeah,
Can't run away from
absolutely.
it. You gotta face those fears and that anxiety, that depression. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, you can't have fear and depression at the same time. I mean,
No, no, like think about it. You think about the fear, depression. You're going to most likely feel one of those things at any given moment. You don't feel them all at once. You're
right,
just something is happening, and what people don't realize is that something stimulated you to even think through that track, right? To go down that way of thinking. So, for example, when people think they fear something, they don't understand. Truthfully, it's not fear. They're
mm-hmm.
just discerning of this particular situation. So you take a girl or a young lady who likes a guy, and all of a sudden he comes in and he's a very like mature, real mature dude, and he's kind of like got that alpha energy. All of a sudden, she says to herself, "Oh, he won't like me because whatever reason she feels like, right?" But then all of a sudden, another kind of quirky guy comes in, and her whole entire mindset changed because it's like, hey, well, yeah, he's kind of quirky or whatnot, and I don't really think that highly of myself. So then I'll choose him because that dude really might not even hold me accountable, and or if he do reject me, I can say, well, anyway, he's stupid, right? So that's just a mindset, right? So we often do that in life. And so like, and I've done it in business and entrepreneurship. I've went out and raised thousands of dollars, if not, if not millions, for any tech company if I've ever founded. And I've even reminded myself, like, hey, bro, like the people that you're going to, have invest in anything you're doing is really not really investing in the actual product. They're investing in you as an individual. And so
Yep.
if you don't actually have that confidence or that energy about yourself to where it's like, hey, no matter what comes, hell or high water, I'm going to actually have the confidence to actually withstand it and know that I'm going to be all right on the other side. But that doesn't start with anything external. That's internal.
Mm-hmm.
And so that brings me to the next point, where about buffalo status is we don't face fear just to stay stagnant. We face fear to get to a greater destination. And I call that
Mm.
greater destination supreme self-esteem. And supreme self-esteem, what's different between self-esteem and supreme self-esteem? First, let's just ask ourselves the real question. How many people can really tell you a real definition of what self-esteem really is? Probably not many.
Mm.
And the reason why? Because mom and dad didn't know what self-esteem really was. They didn't really know how to teach it. Most parents don't even know how to teach us how to actually do our finances properly. Because guess what? They just happened to work their ass off and they figured it out, right? But look at all the turmoil they went through, all the damage that happened to the relationship, all the uncertainty that happened early on because they didn't have an idea. They had to figure something out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now everybody's trading hours for dollars. When all of a sudden this new wave of cats are like, uh, actually, if I create something, an asset that people are going to utilize to actually help themselves, that's a better way to go about it because then I can actually create an asset that continues to pay me. And this is no different than investing or the stock market or however you want to put it. The thing is, you created an asset that allows you to get paid over and over and over again. And that's the two different ways of thinking versus us versus our parents and then the parents before them. But everybody was scared about that Great Depression. And so everybody went to trying to save, 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 save. And all of a sudden, in the end, they realized that saving, saving, saving really wasn't the thing. But the entrepreneurs who thought that, hey, this is not about saving, it's about actually understanding how to create an asset that'll pay me through these depression times. What is going to still be sustainable when we hit depression? Well, the entrepreneurs started to figure this stuff out. And I know I went on a small tangent there, but the tangent is just to kind of show people that, hey, when we are faced with these heavy storms, you must face them. Face them in a way to where it allows you to have much more power in the decision that you're making. And that's where supreme versus self-esteem is two different things. And so I'll make this quick
Mm.
question. I'm make this quick statement. I want to have you ask any questions you have. Is self-esteem is the reputation that we have with ourselves. Period.
Right.
if you, the person, do not have a good reputation with yourself, there's nothing that anybody else can do and or say to you that's going to make you feel any better.
Mm.
Nothing external. And people try to make self confidence in tandem with self esteem, and it's not. Self confidence is pretty much external, it's what your abilities are. Self esteem is internal, it's a spiritual thing. It's what do I believe about myself? And self esteem is also connected to your self worth.
Mm-hmm.
And so your self worth have to be intact. So then what is the difference between self esteem and then supreme? Well, self esteem, you can know that it's about your self worth, but then supreme self esteem is saying, hey, I know exactly when my self esteem is actually being tampered with. And most of us don't realize it, David, is that we have relationships in our life, whether it be girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, wives, grandmas, grandpas, mothers, fathers, who are very toxic and have not realized that their self worth has been plummeting because of the people that they have in their lives. The other
Mm.
aspect of it is the supreme aspect of it is to realize is that also it's me allowing it to happen. And so truly self-esteem in a way, again, is self-worth, but then supreme self-esteem is saying, hey, I know exactly and I can identify when my self-esteem is being tampered with.
So it's like an internal like dial, so you know when your self esteem is starting to waver, and you can get yourself back on track because you're self aware. You know, is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You think about it. If you and I go to a foreign country and all of a sudden someone speaks a foreign language to us, if we don't have some sort of app that can translate that, or we don't have a book that can translate what somebody just said to us, we're going to be confused, and we're not
Mm-hmm.
going to actually get the message. And most times, communication is a huge thing in an environment that you are unaware of. And so we have to be able to translate that language so that we can actually understand it, so we can move properly. But most people are going through their lives not even translating any sort of emotion they feel.
Right. Do you
When
think
that
that just
emotion hits your body, it's a big thing for a lot of people. They run away from it.
right? And do you think that that comes with time, or do you think that that's something that you can instill, let's say, in your young athletes or your son at an earlier age, just from just just having that knowledge and that information and sharing it, or do you think that a lot of that comes from age and just knowing yourself, understanding yourself?
I truly believe that if we can teach a athlete to bounce a basketball, if we can teach a young lady to actually hit a volleyball back over the net, and I can teach a young man to run the hurdles the way that my son can run the hurdles, and I can teach a 4x1 team that's at the age of 8 years old to do a no look relay pass. It is quite simple and easy to talk and speak power into a young woman or a man or a young child and say, hey, the emotion that you're feeling is this. You should not be afraid of it, but listen to yourself and understand what makes you feel sad in this moment.
Mm,
You missed the ball.
identify. Yeah.
Identify it.
Identify it.
And
Yep.
these what these what people are not realizing is that if we can take our child to a specialist for athletics, we take our child to a specialist for chiropractic work or being sick of any sort of thing, and that we can get those things solved. If you yourself as a parent don't know how to speak power into your child, find someone who does,
Mm,
or find the type of information out there, or guys like myself, which I'm willing to actually express it and share it with every parent, because
mm-hmm.
if we can get kids to think and believe in themselves, then I don't have to no longer sit here and be always trying to hold their hands when they're 18, 28,
Right.
38. I can now be like, dude, where are we going to go travel now? And I know that person, my son or my daughter, they got everything together, and they're emotionally able to fight the battles that they're going to fight in life, because these storms are going to come, bro. Storms are
Yeah.
going to happen.
They're
There's nothing that
equipped.
we can do about those storms. That's just a part of the elements. That's just the resistance we need to be better, to get the work in. So I feel like that most of the upbringing is not allowing these youngsters and or even the grown-ups now to even understand what they're truthfully feeling. And so they all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden are not translating what these emotions are, and it becomes more chaotic.
Yep. So you said, reputation with self, and that's, trusting yourself, and those things are they correlate. So tell me about a time when you weren't at Buffalo status, or you didn't have supreme self esteem, and which you kind of alluded to earlier. But how did you get to this point? I mean, what do you? Is there like a time in your life, like an instant, or was it just a gradual progression, or you know, maybe you could just give us a little bit of insight on that journey.
Yeah, now that I look back, David, the truth is I've always had a little bit of it and didn't know it. I've always been like hey, I'm gonna go be ambitious. I'm gonna go out here and attack this, and I've always been decisive in doing it. Yet, what I didn't realize is that I also ran away from the things that I didn't really want to face, and it goes back to the environment thing in your mind versus physical surroundings. So I can uproot myself from Texarkana and not have those things be something that I'm presenting with on a day-to-day basis. However, they still was lingering in my mind even when I was in Amsterdam playing in the NFL year. Those things were still there, and I was still operating with those insecurities. And now
Mm-hmm.
that I look back at it, it was like, oh, well, if you had this sort of mentality or this sort of energy about yourself, it was being formed and you didn't know it being formed. It was like almost a sense of callousing and of protecting yourself from something you felt that was really, really hurtful for you. Or you've been traumatized by. And traumatization can happen on a level that's here, and traumatization can happen on a level that's like extreme. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes what gets us the most is the traumatizations that happen here and no one knows and no one talks about it. And so over
Mm-hmm.
time, you become the person that this trauma is pretty much driving you to be because it's unknowing at the same time, or you're running from it knowingly. And so I remember when I was young, man, we lived in a trailer house, no food, no lights, no electricity. And I remember not actually letting any girls come hang at my house. We had a couple of holes in the floor. It was
Mm-hmm.
cold in my house at certain times, but here it was. I was one of the best athletes, not just on my team, but in the state of Arkansas, and not if not in the country. So I'm literally dealing with this sort of like, hey, I'm legit to everybody else in my athletic talents, but at the same time, I have this sort of like insecurity that we're not worth much because I was attaching my worth to the things that we had,
Mm-hmm.
and that's nowhere near what your worth really is. But what do you what do you tell a child that's looking at it from this perspective when everybody else seems to have the coolest shoes, the coolest clothing, they very clean. They get their haircuts every single day, or excuse me, every single week, or whenever they can do it. And you got everybody living in this amazing house. And you living in a trailer house, in a trailer park, where you just like, I don't want nobody to even know I'm actually here, but because I'm a cool dude at school.
Mm-hmm.
But man, they get a chance to see what I got at home. I might not be that cool.
Right.
And I remember that, but I became so good on the football field, became so fast in hurdles that it kind of like it kind of shielded it. It kind of wiped over the idea of what I was really feeling about it. So all of a sudden, I became extremely good at sports. Got a chance to go play at the collegiate level, and all of a sudden, from there, playing at the professional level. But here was crazy: that doubt, that insecurity, and self esteem that I had for myself was still like, hey, what I see what people see on the outside, it was very very high, but also on the inside, it was almost like half that level. And what the difference was, I wasn't interpreting it correctly. And so at that point in time, then I could be manipulated in relationships. Because at that point in
Mm-hmm.
time, when people start to talk to you a certain way or be a certain way, you tend to take it because you feel like, well, I can do no better than this. But the truth is, you can, and you should probably omit and or delete anyone who is starting to attack your self esteem. So I would say that was the time that I was most insecure, and low self
Growing up.
esteem is when I was a youngster, living in a trailer house, no food, no light, no electricity, and then I really hit rock bottom. I would say halfway through my marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I was like, bro, I am not the same individual. I would take more shit. I would listen to more bullshit. I would like not be active as to like toward the things I really wanted. And the more and more I did that, the more and more I ran away from the storms, the more and
Mm-hmm.
more my self esteem just kept plummeting.
Right. Not living congruent, and even that maybe when you were younger, it's like outside you were here, at home you were here, so you kind of were in the middle, and it's because you wasn't exactly congruent with who you are. So yeah, yeah. I mean, you
Yeah,
really helped me understand that self confidence and self esteem comes from trusting yourself and chipping away and doing the
yeah,
stuff that you need to do,
yeah,
and making progress, and learning new skills and all these things help build that self confidence, and that your I'm missing the word right now, but yeah, you guys get the idea.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So who is your ideal client with Buffalo status? Who would want to reach Buffalo status, and why?
Well, the brand visually obviously builds around that sort of strong girth, masculine energy. And so my first market is going to be men who are, anywhere between the ages of 18 to 55. Um, but also these men who've obviously been through some things, who are kind of like an ambitious individual who knows they actually have more and want to. We don't take victims, bro.
Mm-hmm.
I do not do any one-on-one work with a person who's a victim. The moment that I actually start doing an intake, and I do an intake and I figure out that they're going to actually just be that victim, and they have a victim mindset, and once I do a few things to see if I can try to trigger them to actually respond differently, if they are victims, we don't work well together. Because
Yeah.
what I realize about a person who's a victim is they're looking for just another person who continues to validate that they are the victim. And so what I'm looking for is ambitious individuals who want to truly get after a better life, develop the business they want to, develop the relationships they want to, get after those things, and just make decisive decisions based off the fact that there is no fear, and there is no fear that actually truly can hold me back. And what they end up doing is developing high supreme self-esteem. And that person now, once they have that tool and they have that accountability for themselves and their own self-esteem or their supreme self-esteem, that individual is exactly who we want. And again, so we were looking for ambitious people, men, I would say, initially, but that doesn't mean women are not. I do one-on-one work with women. I have done before, but again, as far as just the brand and everything, and say brand consistent, we again, I want men from the ages of 8 to 58, 68, whoever needs to be able to understand that they have more in them and they're ambitious, and all they need to do is have just this one tool, this one way of thinking about facing fear and develop supreme self-esteem in the
Mm-hmm.
process. That's who we're looking for.
Yeah, the victim mindset is you can't coach it,
Mm-mm.
so gotta be coachable. Um, how does someone find Buffalo status, man? Where can they go if they want some more information on it?
Yeah, man. They can go to buffalostatus.com. So it's buffalo and then status.com. And the first thing they need to do is take my resilience test. Okay. And if they take the resilience test is going to show them kind of where they are as far as resiliency. Because remember, if you have high self worth and high self esteem, that is your resilience. Like you don't just have resilience out of just, yeah, I'm gonna just grit my teeth and be resilient. No, that ain't how it works. And a lot of people think that mental toughness is gritting your teeth and just like grr. Because you hear so many coaches be like, "Be mentally tough, be mentally tough, be mentally tough," and then like the first thing these young cats thinking like, "What did that mean?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you mean you say be mentally tough? And what do you mean when you say better leadership? Like, you cannot lead yourself to the best place that you want to be if you yourself don't feel like you have enough self worth to do so.
Right.
You
Otherwise, you've
have
got
to
that.
really have it's internal.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that's internal is probably going to weigh more than anything that's external.
Mm-hmm.
You and I know that you can literally be, and we've seen it. We've seen very good looking guys. Excuse me, not so good looking guys be with these beautiful women. Well, that person on the inside, they feel their self worth is high.
Mm-hmm.
When then all of a sudden you go get a guy who look, he got the body, he got the car, he got the life, and that son of a gun is the most insecure guy you know.
Right.
And it's because in his mind he don't feel a lot of worth.
Imposter
And
syndrome. Right.
yeah,
Imposter
he feels like
syndrome.
an imposter. Absolutely. And everything on the outside really says, hey dog, you're doing every single thing better than the average person. And you're also doing it very, very well. But if your internal dialogue is saying
Right.
that you don't have very high self worth, then you're going to accept more BS than
Mm-hmm.
what you should be. Also, there's a lot of men out there that don't realize what developing self worth is. That's why supreme self esteem is very important because
Mm-hmm.
you'll know exactly what builds it and what takes it away. And whatever takes it away, you need to start deleting it,
Yeah.
even your own mindset.
Gots to go.
Yeah,
If it's a
you got to
girlfriend
go.
or whatever, she got to go.
Yeah,
So,
she got to go. He got to go. I mean, bro, you're gonna have.
friends.
I've had situations where a friend's been in my life, and the moment that I realized that they were toxic and that they were actually starting to attack my own self esteem for no reason, hey,
Yeah.
I'm like, there's only one person that can control what's happening in this situation. That's me. Only one person going to save me is me. And when you have a high sense of self worth and develop supreme self esteem, you'll start deleting these people out of your life really, really quick.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for taking the time out, bro. This is the first of many. I know we're gonna, have a lot of conversations. And man, once again, just thanks a lot for everything that you do and you've done for me. And keep doing your thing, man, and impacting your community. I know there's a lot of people that look up to you, and just keep doing your thing, bro. Keep chipping
Hey,
away.
man, I appreciate it, bro. I appreciate that. And again, the time has been amazing, like it's always have. So let's keep getting after this, man. I enjoyed it, bro. All
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We'll talk soon, bro. Peace.
right, see you, my man.